people seek therapy services for a variety of issues and needs. I would say that oftentimes anything that overwhelms your natural defense mechanisms is an excellent opportunity for you to seek therapy services. And similar to if you were to break your legs in an accident, you would seek medical attention. It would be similar if you went through a crisis that was unexpected to see somebody that was trained to help you cope and to grow through that experience instead of have to be stuck there. So that's something I'm passionate about, is saying, hey, if you got hurt physically, you would seek help. If you're emotionally struggling, you can seek help as well. So there are many different ways that you can choose a therapist based on your goals and situation. I would say one of the ways is to look on the internet to see and to search for different therapists that specialize in what you're going through. If that's eating disorder related, if that's stress and anxiety, there's lots of different websites that you can search specifically to see what those therapists specialize in. The next idea that I would give to be able to find a good therapist for you would be to ask people in your community, if that's your faith community, or if that's at school or at sports, somebody that you trust, to see if they have any recommendations for a therapist. That's how I hear oftentimes people find therapists is through recommendations from their friends. And then the last one would be, if you know anybody that works in the mental health field, they always have great recommendations of people, maybe even some people that don't even have waiting lists, so you can get in quickly. So those are my 3 different recommendations for finding a good therapist for what you're walking through. I would say in my experience, a therapist is somebody that would be trained in talk therapy and that could do family therapy and use different therapy modalities with you. That could be cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, and depending on what the therapist is trained in. And a psychiatrist would be somebody that would be able to prescribe medication. They also might be trained in therapy as well, but therapists are not typically licensed to be able to give medication. And that would be the role of a psychiatrist. So there is a possibility that you go to therapy and you might not connect with your therapist. I always recommend telling the therapist that you're feeling kind of a lack of connection or rapport with them. Although that could be an uncomfortable situation, it will be really good for you long term, because that therapist can recommend other therapists that might be a better fit for your personality type. So I always tell my friends, if they say, what if I'm not connecting? I always say, why don't you go ahead and tell them, because they can give you recommendations of people that would be a better fit for you. So a therapy session can last anywhere from, I would say, about 45 to 55 minutes. And that is a time for the therapist to help you sort through problems and find solutions. It's also a time for the therapist and you to work together to determine the best choices to make in your life going forward. I would say that it depends if you would have to talk about your childhood in a therapy session. You by no means would be forced to talk about something that you feel uncomfortable or don't want to dive into initially. But I would say that if your childhood is relevant to the need that you have at the current moment, it might be important to explore that. But again, any trained mental health professional would be able to initially build that rapport with their client or patient to be able to build up to see if that would be something we could explore. But I would say I wouldn't be afraid walking into that therapy session that that's going to have to be something discussed in the first session or anything like that. If it's relevant to what you're going through, it might be an important piece of the puzzle, but you don't have to start and only lead with that. So I get asked the question, how long do I need to go to therapy? Quite often. And I would say that the real question is, what are the goals that you want to accomplish in therapy? That would be something that you would talk about initially with the therapist, and together you guys can make goals and a timeline together to determine how long that therapy needs to last for. So let's talk about telehealth. Telehealth has created opportunity for people that did not have access to services to be able to see mental health providers. Perhaps maybe they lived in rural communities, or they had a long commute to work that they weren't able to go back and forth during the day. It did create an opportunity for people to see mental health providers, and I think that's incredible. People oftentimes tell me that they do prefer in person because they like to be able to see the person's expressions and be able to connect in that way and build rapport in person. But I will say, I think telehealth is an excellent, excellent choice to be able to see as many people across the state as we can. I would answer that question by saying that a therapist is a trained professional to be able to give you a perspective that's not biased. It is incredibly important to have the support of your friends and your community. And I think that's a huge part of good mental health and to be able to be supported. But I think a therapist provides a role in your life that is unbiased, that can give you coping skills, and that is trained to be able to help you walk through these difficult situations and get out of being stuck. So I would say the difference is that a therapist is there to be unbiased and give you a perspective that may be other people in your life may not have because they're so close to the situation.